episode 51, August 25, 2020. I'm your host of the 39.6 Facebook Live Finance Show, the show that teaches you how to make your money work for you so you don't have to work for your money. We talk taxes, investing, real estate, syndications, Airbnb, and even the car you drive. Today's episode from a member of our 39.6 Facebook group community asks, should I buy this commercial retail property at auction, which is currently a foreclosure? Thanks for everybody who's joined our Facebook group. We are well over 400 members at this point, rapidly approaching 500. Invite your friends and we'll be there soon. All right, so a member of our group sent me a link to a property. I don't have all of the information. Okay, the information on the due diligence information is confidential, and I'm just going to share the information that is listed on the page. Okay, so this is a retail property. It is 83,000 square feet, built in 2005. It is currently occupied as of July 1, 2020 at 78%, or it says 77.7%, which to me means the ratio 7/9, like 7 are occupied and 2 are vacant. Assuming 77.7 is like that because that's what the decimal approximation of that ratio is. The lot size is 8.5 acres. It has a quote, so this is from the listing, an attractive tenant mix, including a PetSmart, Dollar Tree, and several other national credit tenants. So I believe that means banks, national banks. This says it's a value add opportunity through lease up of the current 22% vacancy. Located in a high traffic volume retail corridor with strong location draw from the adjacent Short Pump Town Center. The reserve is currently not met and the bidding ends in 16 hours. So that's like noon tomorrow. The current bid is $9 million and it has $250,000 increments. So the reserve is higher than 9. The reserve means that is the minimum amount that it will allow you to purchase it with. So for people who use eBay, are quite familiar with this. If you're selling something and you don't want it to sell below a certain price, you can set the reserve at that price so it won't sell below that. Okay, it lists the company who's basically advertising this, the auctioneer. Okay, and it has the property information. It says it is located in a strong local trade area. Market demographics identify average household income north of $100,000 per year in the 1, 3, and 5 mile radius. That's a pretty high income, actually. That's going to be probably around the top 10, 15% income demographic of the country. With affordable home values, consumers have spending power that makes this market extremely desirable. In this submarket of Richmond, Virginia, the retail vacancy sits at 4%. This is your chance to acquire this large center with an opportunity for real upside by leasing the 22% vacancy. Okay, so yes, there's a property that's in foreclosure. Okay, so first of all, there's a reason why this property is in foreclosure, and it's owned by the bank at this time, which means that the person or company who owned this before could not keep up with the payments. And that is always a concern. Why were the payments not kept up? The market has been primarily incredibly strong over the past 5 years. What happened in the past year that would lead this property to go into foreclosure? And my understanding is it went into foreclosure in 2019, not in 2020 from COVID. Okay. And it likely wouldn't have been from COVID because there were foreclosure moratoriums, and COVID is only 5 months ago. Properties don't tend to get bank owned and go through that whole process in just in a couple of months or so. Okay, so this is like in 2019. And if this is in such a great location with only 4% retail vacancy, why does this have 22% vacancy? You always have to be a little bit leery of listings where it says, well, you can just lease it up and you will have a lot of upside. If it were so easy to lease up, the previous person would have done that, right? It can be quite a grind to lease up a property. Now, there may only be 9 units, so if you just get one of the 2 vacancies filled up, then it could be 88.8%. And so maybe I'm looking at this wrong, but potentially it was 66.6% with 3 vacancies just recently, and they got one more in on July 1 to make it look a little bit better. I don't know. So that information that's just on the surface. You really need to dig through the due diligence documents. Now, regarding buying foreclosures in general, foreclosures are something that people who are real estate investors go after because often there can be good deals at foreclosures, particularly on the single family home market, because there are so many single family properties. And these are a lot of smaller investors. When you get to retail commercial assets that are valued at, let's say, $10 million, you're not going to pull a fast one on anybody. Okay. There are people who all they do is focus on buying foreclosed commercial assets, buying them at the right price, getting them turned over, performing, and then selling them at an increased valuation. Okay, that's like flipping a commercial property. They may even literally try to get it at auction at a wholesale-ish price, then sell it directly on the regular market to retail customers. Now, people definitely do that in single family. I don't know if that practice is as much in the commercial space because there's no secrets here. There's a lot of people who are going after commercial assets at $10 million valuation. There are a lot of buyers of small groups of people. I mean, if I needed $3 million in cash to buy a $10 million property on the retail market and get a $7 million mortgage on that, I could get $3 million in a day if it was a great deal. Okay, $3 million is not hard to come by when there are good opportunities. So I'm getting at is it's really hard to get a great deal at any foreclosure at this price point, and especially when something is auctioned on the internet, because the internet is open to the entire world. You could have people from China who are looking to just put their cash and bring it over here to the United States, and they will pay whatever they need to pay just to get their money moved from there to here and basically park it. So you're competing with everybody in the world. Okay. There are definitely people out there who do not require as much of a return on their dollar as you do. Okay. Now, 22% vacancy. I touched on it a little bit already. This is retail space. Okay. In the residential space, 22% vacancy is a non-performing asset. You're below 80%. In the commercial space, this can be a big challenge because right now, especially with COVID, it's very hard to just increase your occupancy of retail space because a lot of retail industry is not actually brick and mortar anymore. It's gone online. People are being furloughed still. Okay, a lot of businesses that require brick and mortar just aren't as sustainable right now in a COVID environment. So that 77% could go down. It could go to zero. We don't know. Now, there are certain things that brick and mortar definitely lend toward, things that you can't necessarily get online as easily. I mean, things like grocery stores. Granted, there is like Amazon, fresh food delivery now, but grocery stores, groceries is something that is an essential part of daily living. We all need to eat. But then there's also the service industry. You can't get services on Amazon, although I guess now you can actually kind of contract services when you buy something. You can buy something and then say, add X amount of dollars to have it installed, but you still have to have somebody do that. So something like PetSmart, okay, it's kind of, I mean, they have like, grooming, they have things for your pets. Those are a lot of the stuff you can buy, you can get online, but they do provide some benefit because they have a brick and mortar presence. It's hard for like the pet industry to go 100% online, right? Especially when they're coupled with a veterinarian. Okay, I only bring that up because that is one of their tenants, and that's probably a very good tenant. I don't know what their books look like, but I would expect they're very good tenants. Banks, probably good tenants, but I don't necessarily know. And again, has 23% vacancy, and that can get worse. Now, if you're buying a property at this price point, or really any price point, but especially something at like 8 figures, you should be doing a lot of due diligence on the property. You should physically walk the property. You should walk into every single store. Vina talked yesterday about walking 494 units on a property this past week. I mean, that's a lot of units to go through. You have to walk through every one. You need to bring contractors around. Going through a property like this, anything that's gone through foreclosure probably is not in like perfect retail shape. Otherwise, it might have just sold by retail, right? There's probably a substantial amount of work that needs to go into this. And if you haven't done commercial type of rehabilitation, you really have no idea what this is going to entail. And then permits and blah, 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 blah. It's a lot. So you have to do incredible amount of due diligence. On the auction site, it does say they make appointments for people to check it out. So you need to have a whole team of people to do due diligence. You need to have people looking at the roof, the plumbing, floors, windows, everything. Okay, so there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done. Now, then you have to actually acquire the property. So I don't honestly know how people buy foreclosed commercial properties because it's not something I've even ever thought of. In the single family space at auction, you basically bring in bank checks, cashier's checks, so that you can pay in cash at the county steps on the day you close at the auction, the first Tuesday of every month here in Texas. I don't know how it's done here. I don't think you can just go get like an agency mortgage, a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac mortgage for these properties. They don't even meet the criteria for those because these are non-performing assets. So do you have to come in with hard money? Do you have to come in with cash of like $10 million? That's a lot of cash to bring in, and to have that kind of cash up front, there will be a lot of cost on that capital to get the deal done at the time of the auction. But maybe they let you bring in a lender. I don't really know how it works in this commercial space. It's hard for me to really fathom this bringing $10 million in cash, but hey, it could be that way. And by cash, I mean like a wire. I don't mean like actual dollar bills. Yeah. Okay. So second is, not second, we're like on number 6. You should have your price. If you are going to buy something at auction, you should have it predetermined before you even like go into the auction. It's really interesting, the phenomenon of like eBay auctions. People like buying on eBay because people like to win. It's not about just buying, but there's also the enjoyment of winning that people get out of it. So people often buy to win so they can get that feeling. That is not how to buy something. So you should have the price determined before, and that's your price, and that's it. It shouldn't matter what other people are bidding at, but undoubtedly there are people who are going to bid based on what action is going on in the auction. Interestingly, when you look at eBay and and items that are sold with a reserve or not with a reserve, I usually sell with no reserve. And so it's listed at 0.01 cents. I don't eBay very much anymore, but I used to do it a lot. That's how I used to rack up bunches of credit card points. But by buying and selling on eBay, buying good deals and then selling on eBay or Fleabay. Items with no reserve, they often sell higher than items with a reserve, because what happens is when there's no reserve, you get a bunch of action, you get a bunch of people bidding, and the price goes up. And when people see that other people are bidding, they're more willing to bid because there's some buyer confidence that other people want it. And there's also the buyer desire to win. When something has a high reserve price listed on eBay, or not listed, but there's a reserve and it hasn't made it, people stop bidding. And so you just don't see as many bids. So people are less apt to bid up because they don't have that same buyer confidence. Just as an aside, I don't know how well this relates to a $10 million property. If you're buying a $10 million property, this is something that you should do with somebody else who's already done it. So they know how to underwrite it. They know exactly like the process, and you can use them to partner, and you can do more of the work and you can use more of their experience. That's really probably the best way to be going about this. And lastly, when it comes to things like properties at this extent, or even properties in general, I wouldn't buy off of a website from an auction because of the bidding war that it's designed to create. When you're bidding and you win, okay, somebody told me this in real estate. When you win, you lose, right? Because everybody else out there, they are bidding and they have so much experience and knowledge of exactly this, that if you win, then you're overpaying. And so they were going to make potentially margin at a certain point, but going above that, they don't have a safe margin anymore. And for somebody else with less experience to then make a margin at that price, it's even harder. So it can be a very, 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 very risky proposition and to go at it in that direction. So it's something that I stay far away from. But there are definitely people who make a ton of money buying non-performing assets, converting them to performing assets, and then selling them at the multiple, at the prevailing cap rates. But you've increased the net operating income by so much that you've really increased the value. It's a great business model if you have the team and the tools to do that. These are very risky because often you only have a limited time to really do this. You can't buy a non-performing asset with really good loan terms. So often you have like a 2-year, 3-year short-term bridge loan maybe, just to get you by until it's performing, and then you have to refinance out into a better term. But who knows if that's even going to be able to be done within the time constraints you have of that loan with the restructuring or balloon payment that may come up. And something like COVID right now, who knows when you're actually going to potentially get that asset performing, and it can continue to non-perform and perform worse over the next 6 months easily, right? So without knowing a lot more information about the property, those are my thoughts. But thank you for bringing it up. It is always great to bring up topics like this, because I know a lot of people look at these things online and say, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to try to buy something online. There's a lot more to it than that. All right. So that will be it. Today was a shorter one. Yesterday was a marathon. That is it for episode number 51. Again, brought to you by our sponsor, the Medicine, Marriage, and Money podcast, coming at you in September. All right. Thank you for everybody who's been in here in the group and saying hi. Yes, there's that dopamine when you win. All right. Until tomorrow, episode number 52. Who knows what episode 52 will be? To be determined. Until then, have a great evening. Invite your friends to the Facebook group. Help us get up to number 500. I set a goal before September 7th. So we have 2 more weeks to get there. Almost 2 weeks, maybe a little bit less. I think we'll make it, but I need your help. Take care.